He traveled to Philly to be with me on the plane, and he also brought his girlfriend. Her name is Cheryl, and she was a very nice lady, very supportive. And I was thinking she might be my future stepmom, and so that was okay. That was okay. I was excited, um, and it was going to be a big thing. It was going to be a big thing. So our flight was going to be several legs long. So my dad was going to be giving me like treats and letting me have what I wanted in that way. So I had stocked up on those things definitely. And in the airport at that time, uh, the Eagles were the Eagles football team players were in the Philadelphia airport at the same time I was, and they were traveling to London because they were going to play at Wembley Stadium. And so I love the Eagles. And well, actually, I have a love-hate relationship with the Eagles, as every good Philadelphia fan does. You love them, you hate to love them, you love to hate them. Come on, that's all that we do in Philadelphia with our players. And I had just used the restroom in the airport, and as my dad and I were coming out of the restroom, I saw these guys. They were together. They were huge. They were very strong. They were boisterous, and I was really. I mean, I'm 9 years old, and I'm you know small, and these guys are like huge and awesome, and they're coming toward me, and then I start to recognize who these guys were. I mean, like if you know the Eagles at all, you know people like Reggie White, Clyde Simmons, and of course Randall Cunningham, who everyone knows. I mean, just really impressive men. And I was like stunned, and I noticed that Randall Cunningham goes into the restroom that I had just come out of, and I don't know what happened, what possessed me to go back in the restroom to go talk to Randall Cunningham when he's using the urinal. And
just look at him.
so I just like go right up to him like in the next spot and just say, yeah, hi Randall. And you know, most likely Randall's been in this situation before where a young fan comes up to him, and even though that it is pretty awkward at this point, but I'm 9 years old and I love the Eagles, and he was kind and he's like, okay, kid, hold on a second. um, and I remember, I don't remember anything negative about that. I remember that fondly, and it's kind of funny now. Um, and it was a very impressive moment because later on, when I went back to school that year, when you usually write the what I did over the summer kind of thing, I wrote about that. It gave a lasting impression in my mind, and what a cool way to meet someone in a kind of vulnerable way too. But but that's pretty impressive that I did that, to go into that urinal with Randall Cunningham. I mean, how many people can say that? Anyway, but football was really huge because it was a way that my dad and I could connect. And maybe that's stereotypically male, where you don't really need to talk about emotions very much through the veil of talking about sports. But it's a thing that I definitely connected with my dad, and that was important. So anyway, back to the treats that he gave me. I had a lot of them, and we're finally on the plane. And our plane is not a direct flight to Las Vegas. We start in Philly, we go to St. Louis, and then we go on to Las Vegas. So, things were going okay, except that, it's a new experience. The plane. My stomach started to hurt. I was getting very nauseous, and I said to my dad, Dad, I think I'm going to throw up. And my dad was very cavalier about that. He was like, okay. So he goes and he gets one of those barf bags out of the seat uh, envelope, that seat thing. And he was just very cavalier because it wasn't like, oh my God, what's the matter? It was just like, here you go. And he just snaps it open like that, and he gives it to me. And that was like, okay, deal with it now. So deal with it, kid, kind of thing. And so, okay, I have the bag if I need to vomit, and sure enough, I did. Except that the vomit did not go down into the bag. It went projectile vomit style. We all know what that looks like. Over the seat in front of me. Oh my goodness, I was a mess. People were a mess in front of me. Thank goodness for Cheryl, because she was very helpful in kind of like massaging the whole situation. The flight attendants were very helpful in trying to make the best of the situation. My dad, not so much, kind of like taking that emotional kind of care of me, but it got resolved. It got resolved. And eventually, so like the vomiting happened over Kentucky, somewhere over Kentucky.
Still a running joke.
And we got to St. Louis finally after all of that. We got to St. Louis, but we realized that the flight was canceled. Our next connecting flight to Las Vegas was canceled, and so we had to get a hotel, and we stayed overnight. And that was another new event for me to be there like that. We finally get to Las Vegas, and when we land, because of our delays of what we had, we go right away to pick up Cheryl's family, and these folks were potentially my stepfamily. So I was okay meeting them, and we start our road trip of the West at that point. I remember we were driving a lot. We got to Utah to see sights and everything, and then we got a hotel room. And I remember this moment that we were just relaxing in the hotel, and we wanted to watch a movie together, which is awesome, and that's good. And I realized we're okay. I realize now, as a father, that if I were in that situation at that point, I would be asking my kids. I would defer to them. I would say, like, well, what do you want to watch? Like, because that's what we do as parents. It's like, it's not about us. It's, we're trying to be a family, and it's a family time, and that's good. But my dad insisted on his pick of movie, and it was Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And it's a silly movie. There's nothing like terribly inappropriate about it that a 9-year-old couldn't watch, but it's not humor that a 9-year-old would appreciate either. And I was getting, a little frustrated internally that I probably couldn't even articulate to my dad. And I was getting frustrated. It wasn't my choice of movie. And right now, at that point, he was kind of incompetent as a parent, to not even care what I was thinking about as a movie. And I actually then called the movie Dirty Rotten Shitheads. And that went over pretty well with Cheryl's children. And maybe it kind of diffused the situation a little, but I still had this awareness that I was frustrated with how he kind of handled it, and maybe I couldn't think about how he was actually parenting me. And it's fine to be giving treats and stuff, but where was the actual like emotional care? And so part of the rest of the trip was awesome. Like we went to theme parks, we went to national parks in the Southwest. And I still get a lot of. I mean, I love that. I love the scenery. I still love the outdoors, and probably a lot of that love for that was fostered on that trip. Um, and eventually, um, I was able to fly back alone. And believe it or not, the flight back was not as fraught as the flight to go there because I was alone and um, it was fine. But because there wasn't the anxiety of being with my dad and what that was. And at 9 years old, I probably didn't know how to say that weirdness. I wouldn't be able to even like categorize what that weirdness was that I felt when I was with him, but I knew something had changed and shifted when I went home on that flight. That I was like, oh, it was okay to be going back home, and being by myself because being alone as an unaccompanied minor on a plane, that is kind of scary. But even that was okay
Yeah.
because it wasn't what I had just experienced and was like frustrated with and didn't know how to say it. And how could a 9-year-old say that to a parent that you haven't seen, you know? Um, so in this story, there's a lot of there's a lot of humor, but also looking back on it, it's really it's really about my coming to terms with this disconnection that I have with my father. And if you think about it, the trip was a way for me to connect, and uh, and we did, except that there was still an underlying anxiety there, and his emotional unavailability just contributes to that disconnection. Um, but there was definitely a fun-filled first of plane
Yes.
flying and father re-meeting. I'm not going to say reconnecting yet, but re-meeting,
Right.
re-meeting, just getting back.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Great job. Thank you very much.
I hope that was okay.
Lovely. It's nice to hear that story in that way. Yeah. So, for those of you, if you're still watching, hopefully, and we'll talk about this, but I think what you saw there is Dr. Moore, giving a great model for what we'd like you guys to do. And I don't know, any closing thoughts, Dr. Moore, about the kind of the empathy that gets achieved there and having to maintain that I perspective? There were some moments when it almost seemed like you were telling your own story again. You did it so well in sharing my story. Um, I don't know. Any
Yeah, there
closing
were
thoughts?
there were moments that I really glommed onto,